back, top off the night with the Forgotten Fighters, talking about Gerald G-Man McClellan out of Freeport, Illinois in the Midwest. And a lot of people know the story, so I'm not going to really get in that much of the story until the end. But he was a middleweight, also a super middleweight. He was really, really famous other than his, some of the things he had going on in his last fight. He was really famous for beating the power puncher, junior middleweight, and middleweight, Julian Jackson at the time, all right? But one thing I want to point out about McClellan was, you know what? In his 11th and 12th professional fight, in the 6th and 8th rounder, he lost. He lost to Dennis Milton and Ralph Ward. Not two big household names, but he lost, all right? And it didn't stop him for going on to be a great fighter, all right, or be a really, really good fighter. I think he would have been a great fighter if some things didn't happen in his career, which we'll get into, but it didn't stop him. He had two back-to-back losses. It was his 11th and 12th fight to Dennis Milton in New Jersey, and another loss in Atlantic City, both in Jersey. And it didn't stop him. You know what I'm saying? He continued to move on, and he got better. You know what I'm saying? And that's what you got to look at these things, man. A loss don't mean nothing. You know what I'm saying? It's about how you bounce back, and it shows how resilient you were. But this dude was a power puncher, athletic, transcendent guy. They called him like the mini Mike Tyson. He was built like a wedge. He could punch like a horse, and Julian Jackson could punch. He put some people lights out at 154 pounds, like Terry Norris, who was trained by Abel Sanchez at the time, I believe. But he won his title on a vacant WBO title versus John Mugabe. John the Beast Mugabe actually gave Marvin Hagler a hell of a fight. He was a junior middleweight, moved up to middleweight, and he can bang. Him and Hagler had one of the best fights you want to see, man, going back and forth. And then I believe it was after that fight that Sugar Ray Leonard decided to face Marvin Hagler. But G-Man was trained by Emmanuel Stewart, and we get into that situation as well, too. He had some legendary sparrings with James Toney, in the ring, in the Kronk gym. So he was a part of the little Kronk thing till him and Emmanuel fell out. I think it was over money, but don't quote me on that. But, he was the most technical fighter, but he could punch. And you can see why he would have back-to-back losses, because he wasn't real technical. He had to get his fundamentals up. And this really wasn't the fighter that Emmanuel Stewart, really trained, tall, range. He had the height and the length, but McClellan was more of a banger. And it took some people by surprise that he beat Julian Jackson, because probably the two losses, and he really wasn't fundamental, but they had worked hard on his fundamentals. If you go back and watch that fight, he defended that title 3 times before moving up to super middleweight to take on Nigel Benn against Jay Bell, Gilbert Baptist, and then he rematched Julian Jackson again. And shout out to Julian Jackson for wanting to try to get his title back at the MGM Garden Arena. And Julian Jackson got stopped in 1 round this time. Last time he got stopped in the 5th round. All right, so apparently they were saying that McClellan took a lot of punishment versus Julian Jackson in those 2 fights, and they happened within about a year, just a year apart, and they took a lot of damage, and he had took some punishment, you know what I'm saying, in those fights, and apparently I know a lot of people know this story. I think a lot of young people know the story as well. He took some damage in that fight, and he went over to the UK to fight Nigel Benn. Now, that was not something a lot of Americans was doing. A lot of Americans wasn't going over to the UK to chase those guys. Those guys refused to come over here, but Gerald McClellan kind of broke the mold and went over there and fought Nigel Benn. Nigel Benn hit him with a punch, and all of a sudden he suffered some mental issues from that punch. But before he took that punch, it was said that he said, he didn't need no guy going into this fight, and woo, woo, woo. And he had fell out with Emmanuel Stewart, probably over money. And he said some things, and apparently, he was damaged goods. You know what I'm saying? And his family wanted Nigel Benn to pay for the damage, but it's the hurt business. That's not his responsibility. And he went over there, and they said he already had damage from Julian Jackson. Julian Jackson was a monstrous puncher. And pretty much February 25th, 1995, over in the London Arena in England, that's where his career ended at, because Nigel Benn, you know, hit him with a punch. And, you know, the mini Mike Tyson story was over with. He never recovered from those injuries. And it's the hurt business. When people say legitimately one punch could change your career in boxing and end it, that's legit. You know, that's what happened to Gerald McClellan. You might not always see it in the prize fighters, but it happens more often than none. But like I said, man, we really never got to see the best of him. But you know, he had some other things going on as well. You know, Roy Jones would go see him. Roy Jones said he was the only guy that he would never have fought him, and it's hard for him to see Gerald McClellan that way, because if he seen him that way, he never would want to box again. But he ended up 34 fights, 31 wins, 3 losses, including the loss to Nigel Benn, which he never boxed after that. But it's an amazing story. It's documentaries on YouTube you can watch. Man, he was transcending. He was into, you know, other things, which I won't really tarnish the video with some of the accusations that he was in, as far as the dog fighting and stuff of that nature. But yeah, you know, he'd be seen with his dogs a lot, you know, on the red carpet taking pictures. You know, he was getting into his own little swag and his groove as a professional. And he was rising, man. He was rising. He was knocking out everything. We beat Julian Jackson. You know, he was on the rise. He would have beat Nigel Benn too, man. But, you know, that happened. But Forgotten Fighters, Gerald McClellan, the G-Man, another Midwest a thumper. And we breed them boys down here in the Midwest, man. We got the best boxers ever, you know. And you can just check the resume from Aaron Prime, Floyd Mayweather, Tommy Hearn, Sugar Ray Robinson, Joe Louis. You name it, we got them, whatever weight division that matter. But we on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Make sure you check us out there. If you want to donate, the PayPal link is there as well. You can wait till we go live. Blessings to all the brothers. Shout out to the mighty LDBC. Y'all know what it is. We gone.